All right, everybody, welcome back to the Confused Breakfast. We have a very special guest today. He is a comedian, actor, rapper, singer, songwriter, director, record producer, musician, and per Wikipedia, internet celebrity. His YouTube channel has over 650 million views. You may know him as Taco from The League or from his song Everyday Normal Guy, or maybe even when we gushed about his current musical project, Wolfie's Just Fine, on the Home Alone 2 episode. Please welcome to the show, Jon Lajoie. Thanks for being here, buddy.
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me. I'm a fan of the show, and I love talking about old movies. And like I was saying before we started rolling, my wife was like, if anyone, if you're going to talk about Wolfie's Just Fine on any podcast, feels like this podcast was made for this project. So I appreciate you guys. And by the way, eliminate all those titles. I just want to be referred to as a rapper.
Nice. With a W or no W? Sorry.
W,
terrible joke. I apologize.
Well, I do have a question for you, man. We'll get into a bunch of stuff here, but I mean, you're clearly, as the Wikipedia page said, a man of many talents. I mean, you've been known for so many different things that you've done. When you were growing up, was there one particular artistic world you wanted to be in as you got older?
Ooh, good question. I don't know. I when I was a kid, the first thing I started doing was drawing. That was like my first, I guess, creating things. I remember hating coloring books because you couldn't just create whatever you wanted to do. But as a kid, I'd go to church, and I grew up in an evangelical household. We can get into that later. But sitting on the, we would crouch down, and my parents would give us papers and pens and all that stuff. And I would draw out Ghostbusters scenes.
Really?
I would just I'd draw the monster and make it as scary as possible. And then in my mind, I would have the dun, 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 dun song, and I'd have them all appear, and then destroy the monster, as it goes. But that was my first. And then art classes in high school were a way for me to be creative. But then drama classes in high school, it was the first time that I felt like I was good at something, because I was a very, very average, below average, forgettable, quiet kid. And so my drama teacher was like, hey, you're pretty good at this. And so I kind of at some point went in that direction. But at the same time, I picked up a guitar and started playing music. So I don't know. I'm kind of okay at a few things, and I guess wow. This is why I don't do podcasts, because I'm I gotta talk about. You gotta talk about stuff. I'm not just thinking it, and people know what I'm thinking. I have to use words. I'd say acting was the first thing, but then while I was in theater school, I started a band, and so those two things kind of went hand in hand, and never ever until I started posting YouTube videos did I even know that I was funny or could do comedy. I was never the funny guy. I have a lot of comedian friends who just knew from a young age that they loved making people laugh and doing comedy and all that stuff. I didn't know that until I was maybe 25, 26 when YouTube came around, and I just felt like doing something fun. In my mind, I'd try to make some low budget Kids in the Hall sketches or whatnot. And I did that for a little while, and then I recorded a funny song that, just because I knew how to kind of record and write music, at some point I recorded a funny song called High as Fuck, and that kind of got around, and so I was like, oh, well, I'm a funny musician guy now, and so I kind of went in that direction, and then a bunch of other stuff happened, and I was the funny guy. But I was never that was never part of the plan. I kind of had to do it to find out.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. Was it always sort of associated with music, the comedy kind of aspect and acting? Was that always kind of a part of it, or
Um, well, I'm so uncomfortable when people ask me questions.
Do you want to? Hey, do you want to start? You want to ask us some questions first, just to lighten the mood? You can totally do that.
Well, I actually want to know. You guys are in Iowa.
yeah?
We are,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, how did you guys get started? Like, just this might help me. I need to know, like, how did you guys start doing this together? Like, when did you decide, hey, let's talk about old movies, with nostalgia together on a podcast? How did this happen?
We all are musicians, funnily enough,
Oh
and
shit!
we played in bands. AJ and I were in a band together, and locally we started just like we put on like a music festival in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and AJ did most of the brunt of the work. But I wanted to have like the artists on and have them like tell their story of like, what's it like to be a musician in Iowa. And so that started as like a Wolfpack podcast. We had our like company called Wolfpack Productions, and then we had Mike on, who still is and was in the Pork Tornadoes, and just hit it off. And 2020 rolls around, and Mike's like, I want to do something with you guys. You guys want to just talk about movies? So it was pretty much kind of born out of us having rapport together and being good friends, and then just being bored and not having anything to do in the pandemic.
That was my biggest problem. Is I went from playing 60 shows a year to then COVID hits, and my creative energies are they don't go anywhere. We're not playing shows, and that's when I had the idea to talk to these guys about it. And that's really kind of where I think you can fit into this, because there's something special. We're figuring out this whole nostalgia thing. Like there's something unbelievable about us all being able to look back on like old movies and old music and the feelings it brings us, which is, we just wanted to talk about movies, but the audience has gained because of our takes on it nostalgically. And that's what's always drawn us to what you've done, especially this Wolfie's Just Fine stuff, man. Like it's such an incredible take on taking something from a movie kind of a thing, and then but making it like modern day, a different view on it, which fits so well into how we look at movies sometimes,
Yeah. No, absolutely. And well, the thing about, and I've heard you guys talk about this, movies when you're a kid, it's your entire universe, or it's a window into a world, and your emotional response to movies, but to everything, into the world when you're a young person is just all it's all encompassing. Like, it's a type of intense emotion that I have zero access to at this point in my life. And so I think when I started writing songs for Wolf Is Just Fine, I didn't know what to write about, because I didn't know how I'd approach it, because I'd been writing comedy music for so long, where you're like, well, hopefully you get a laugh, like that's the end game, but also hopefully you're doing something that you enjoy, or sharing a little bit about yourself or whatnot. But with Wolfie's Just Fine, I was like, I'm not Tom York, I'm not Leonard Cohen. I'm not gonna. I know people know me as Taco or the Show Me Your Genitals guy. Like, I'm not delusional. and I kind of knew that, like if Nick Kroll came out with a serious album, and it was like it was like the White Album by the Beatles, like it was amazing. I don't know if I could wrap my head around it. I know that I would be kind of confused. And so I kind of knew that when I was writing this stuff, I had to find my voice in an authentic, kind of sincere way. And I just kept, the way that I was accessing emotions, or I still had access to my emotions, was through my childhood, through those moments that I remember that were very intense, like watching my first horror movie. I wrote a song about that on the first album, which is, one of the most intense emotional moments of my life. You're like seeing your first naked woman. You're seeing your first murder on screen, or a murder period.
That was my entrance to Wolfie's Just Fine. Is I was listening to a horror movie podcast and someone talked about it, and I'm like, what is that? And I checked it out, but it is the story of you watching your first horror movie, but it's also, I feel like, a story of like a sexual awakening almost as well. Like that's how I take it, because it's so, especially like the bridge in it builds so much where you're just like, all of those emotions are clashing together, and it sounds just like that. It sounds just like an intense experience of seeing someone, get their head almost cut off by a belt on a tree, and seeing a beautiful woman. I think, what's her name? Her name is Voorhees, something Voorhees, right?
Deborah Voorhees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And seeing her beautiful. All those clashing together. I was like, wow, this guy gets it somehow. I have no idea how, but he got it.
Well, that's very, very sweet and very kind. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, you're good. You're good. I think I just need to echo that, because I think that's one of the big things that resonates. And I take it back to, when you're talking about when you're a kid and you're watching movies, and they take over your world for like the 2 hours, hour and a half to 2 hours, and they take it over. And I always talk about it because you just have this kid literal brain. Like, you can't comprehend to a certain degree. Yeah, it's I know it's a movie, but at the same time, it's happening. Like, it is happening, whether it's real or fake or whatever it is. And it's like your literal kid brain just doesn't take it as anything other than serious to a degree. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, I know it's a horror movie. Yeah, I know it's the big shot, the last point of the big game. I get it, but I take it so seriously and so literally as a kid. And that's what ends up coming across when I listen to like your music, like Wolfie's just fine singing about, whether it be Pigeon Lady or that moment of Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant. And you're just, and I didn't even witness that as a kid, but I know that feeling that you're talking about. And I'm just like, God, when Sean showed me this, I don't know how many years ago, because he showed me your music so long ago, and I was just like, and then it like took me over for like, I don't know, like several months, and I was really stoked on it. So, and that's why I think it's such the draw, and that's why I think it's so fun to do this show. You just get to kind of revisit those like very literal moments that you had as a kid, and then come to find out, man, they might not even hold up, but it's okay.
Yeah, no, of course. No, I think that, and I listened to your Demolition Man episode recently, and just hearing you guys is very entertaining. But just hearing you talk about Demolition Man, I remembered I can't remember what year that came out, maybe like 93 or 94, maybe.
I think
yeah. And I was like,
93.
I just remembered being an awkward young teenager, and that being like, it's all and those are like the later years where movies, they still are your entire world. But for Demolition Man, I just remember all of it, and I remember it's very emotional for me. I don't know that movies now have that effect on me. Some really good movies or very specific movies will have a lasting effect on me. I just watched Barbarian. You guys know Barbarian? And I can't shake it. I'm like, whatever energy is being channeled in that movie, like I can't shake it in a different way. But I remember watching Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and being like, that's no, for real. Like, there are places where people rip out each other's hearts, and all of this is real somewhere in the world, and I'm getting a window in on this. And every movie kind of felt like that, and I think that's I get it. Like, nostalgia is a thing, but it's also I feel like it's a remembering the intensity of emotions.
Yeah.
Yes.
You have to fucking numb out in this world as an adult.
Yeah.
I mean,
God,
if you don't, you're probably a beautiful human, but you are in trouble. And so before you know that, it's that access, and that I think the Hulk Hogan song was about that. It started as a joke. I was just was telling my buddy, I was like, the amount of mushrooms and weed and alcohol I'd have to like streamline into my veins to feel even like 1/10 as happy and as exhilarated as I felt when Hogan slammed the giant. You know, I don't even know if it would be possible. You know, so I kind of loved thinking back on that, and it's a bit of like it's like a joyful experience, but it's also a sad experience, you know, the mourning of the loss of that.
Right.
There's a balance in the lyrics in that, very much of like that moment in time as time is flying by. Like it's like time's flying by, and it's just and you don't realize it. You just like you just said, never gonna have this again, and I don't even realize it at that point.
Yes, you don't know at that moment that in 30 years you're gonna be making a podcast about it.
Yeah, exactly.
We talk about it all the time. There was a moment on some movie where
The Sandlot, maybe?
The Sandlot, where at one point you and your friends all went outside to play together for the last time, and you didn't know it. And that cuts me deep, man, because like that's what we're all yearning for is the simpler times of it. And I think that's what's so popular about music like yours that goes back and podcasts. And my first experience to you was Pigeon Lady. And the reason I knew I liked you so much was that a lot of times we'll talk about Home Alone 2 and we'll be like, okay, so what happened after this? And like 30 years later, what do you think happened? And a lot of people, they can't grasp that. They're like, it's just a movie, right? It's just a movie. It didn't really happen. It's like, well, I get that, but also it's really fun to just imagine the world that this actually exists in. And for you to take a subject like Pigeon Lady and go 30 years later and her still being alive and the events actually happening, like it blew my mind. And I'd love to know more about Pigeon Lady and like what went behind you coming up with that story and what that means to you.
I mean, it is very, very touching when people really do connect with the music. It means a lot because, there are a few people out there, but not that many. And like people who also understand what the song is about is a little rare because Pigeon Lady's a little obscure in the lyrics. Like, I don't even know how you guys figured it out. But I guess people.
Wait, are we right? Are we correct at least?
No. You're 100% correct.
Thank God.
No. A lot of people I'll mention. This is the thing. Like, it's tricky. Some people want to know what a song's about, and some people really don't. So, like, when I mentioned another song of mine called "Trying to Sleep," and I was like, it's from the point of view of a graboid from the movie Tremors. And they were like, I don't want to know that.
No.
I'm like, I totally got it. I'm like, but they do have feelings too, right?
Yeah.
Totally. And some
we
people
always
don't
humanize the goons here, John. Like we always are humanizing those sad creatures that they just want to sleep.
They didn't want to be there.
Dude, well, first of all, it's fucking yes. I'm 100%. This is why this is the only podcast where I can talk about Wolfie's just fine. I'll get back to Pigeon Lady in a second, but the Trying to Sleep one, the thing that's fun, or the fun, or the finding what a song is about and how to, like, what am I going to do here? All of a sudden, I just kind of, because I had a demo where I recorded the chorus Trying to Sleep, and I felt like, I was like, oh, it kind of has like a dark underground feeling to it. For some reason, the movie Tremors came to mind, and I always had thought, like, where were these huge worms before like the beginning of this movie? Because they're there, and then all of a sudden the graboids start attacking the town of Perfection, Nevada, which is a great title, which I named my EP after. And I was like, what was going on in their minds? They must have been trying to not kill the humans. They must have been like just randomly eating some animals, and then eventually they got so big that they just couldn't think about the humans anymore. It's either we start eating humans or we die, and so they decide to start attacking the town and eating them. I don't know, that kind of created itself in my mind. And they're like, we were trying to sleep for you. We were trying to not do this, but sorry, guys. But as soon as I start saying that, people are like, dude, I thought the song was, like I heard Metallica once. Like when I was a kid, I was like, "Whoa, Metallica!" It's like super deep, and they are like and dark and obscure. And I love the song "Nothing Else Matters." And I remember hearing James Hetfield say, "Oh, it's about like being on the road and you miss your chick." And I was like, "What?"
No,
What a letdown!
Like I thought it was like so close, no matter how far. I'm like, no, that's not what it's about. Anyway, all that to say, Pigeon Lady. I don't know. That character always stood out to me, and I didn't set about like writing a song about anything. I just, as soon as you start thinking about a character and you go, what happened to them, not unlike what you're talking about, and you go, what's the emotional experience, and if they never saw each other again, like what did that moment mean to her? And I have a hard time even talking about it without crying, or I can't watch Home Alone 2 without crying, because if you think about it, you're like, how much that moment meant to her, especially if she didn't change. And she
Right.
didn't take,
and I don't think she did. I think you're right.
I don't think so. I think, as we get older, we get kind of stuck in our ways. And, it's only after writing it, and often like years later, where I go, what the fuck was I like? Why did that, why was I thinking about that? Why did that version of the song come out? And it's always like in relationship to something you're going through, or something you can't maybe express. And it just kind of comes out, and eventually you're like, oh, I think those moments are really, really important of people connecting. And again, I don't want to say, I don't even know what the song's about, but I think that how valuable it is, particularly for people who are fairly solitary, which I am that. This is like the first podcast I've done in 2 years. I don't, do the being out in the world, as you can probably tell, talking to people. So I think I can relate to her on some level, and so I'm just somehow talking about myself, but thinking.
I think it comes across, and I think it comes across in almost all of your music. I think, and specifically on Pigeon Lady, like she's the old man Marley from the first one. Obviously, it's the first one over again, but they have to have
he's
that
gonna
character.
change. We see that he's
exactly
going to change.
That's my point. Is that we see him get back together with his family, but we don't know what happens to Pigeon Lady. And I love that a lot of your songs are about these sort of kind of B characters or even background characters that that kind of stand out for a sec. Like I'm Staying with the Bomb. I think is that is Die Hard with a Vengeance, right?
Well done.
Okay. Yeah. See, and that is, again, that's I was just I played that song. I've played that song so much, and I was like, and honestly,
I think I wrote this. The entirety of the Wolfie catalog is specifically for you guys. And
That's what I'm pretty sure.
It's the best.
Which means it's for our audience, which is why we're talking to you. Right?
Well, that's awesome.
All these characters that you're talking about, like Charlie, with the Staying with the Bomb, Pigeon Lady, Todd and Janelle, and like there's now realizing the Graboids.
I didn't guess that one either.
The idea that these are, and I guess they're forgotten characters. Yeah. They're forgotten characters. They're ones that are going to be forgotten. Todd and Janelle are murdered, cold hard cash blood, and we're just gone to the next scene.
And the guy in Die Hard with a Vengeance does a heroic thing and is forgotten about.
Yeah,
until this beautiful tribute you made.
Well, first of all, I'll get into that later, but Charlie, I can't also watch. It's weird. Like once I go through the songwriting process with these movies and these characters, I have a hard time watching the movies without crying, because I'm like thinking about, as soon as you like hone in on a character, it's just like any human, as soon as you like really focus on a human, you're like, holy shit, like the universe of this person. And with Charlie, the thing that was always that always stood out to me was how quickly he decided to stay. You know, and he doesn't know it's pancake syrup in but spoiler alert to anyone who hasn't
Oh,
seen
yeah,
Die
yeah.
Hard with a Vengeance. Great movie. I mean, the ending doesn't hold up, but like the first half of that movie is one of the best action movies ever made.
I agree.
Jeremy Irons, the best. Sam Jackson, it's wonderful. But anyway, Kevin Chamberlain, who plays him, just does this terrific job of being like, he's a little bit of a weirdo, but he knows everything there is about bombs and explosives, and he's nerding out on these explosives. And there's that moment where they get all the kids out, and they're like, "Save yourself," you know. He couldn't dismantle the bomb, and then they call him back and say there are still kids in the building, and he pauses for maybe a second and goes, "I'm staying." And you're like, whoa. And you know, people make those decisions every day. He just like, no, this is what I do. I do this, and I'll die doing this. And there's something incredibly moving about that. And then people, you know, I'll tell people that it's about a guy from a minor character from Die Hard with a Vengeance, and they're like, "Oh, so it is comedy." I'm like, to me, it's not. I'm like, to me, I'm like, you know, I was telling the producer on the last record, this guy Jordan Lenning, who's out in Nashville, he's a wonderful producer, and I was telling him, there's no, like, this is the most, I know this song is about, say, Hulk Hogan, you know, and the video is going to be the old LJN figurines, it's going to be toys, and it's about silly WWF, but I'm like, this is like the most serious thing that we could ever talk about. Like, we have to, the goal is to have grown men hopefully tear up. Like, let's just have that as the North Star and then go from there. And so whenever I'm talking about this, it's interesting, you know, and I really appreciate that you guys get it. Like, I'm, you know, it's like life and death, you know. I think I grew up in an evangelical household, so I think everything has like elevated meaning or something. I'm not in that world anymore, but it's tough to compete with, like, you're trying to save the souls of the world. Everything is a battle between good and evil. So whenever I'm like doing something, inevitably I approach it pretty seriously. But yeah, no, Kevin Chamberlain reached out. He sent me a message and he was like, you nailed Charlie, man. I was like, what? And I lose my mind. Like, you know, people, I live in LA, so sometimes you'll come across people, or on the League, you'd have like the, you know, Jeff Goldblum's on set, and I'd freak out, you know, and I get all quiet because I'm like, no, you don't understand. I grew up in Montreal. I'm not used to being around people like that, you know, famous people. But to me, the most famous people are those people. And hopefully this is not a long story, but like Kevin Chamberlain, with the horror movie, the woman in that scene is Deborah Voorhees from Friday the 13th Part 5. She reached out as well after seeing the music video and was deeply moved. And she lives in, I think, in New Mexico. And she's like, I come out to LA sometimes. We should meet up for coffee. I met up with her, had coffee with the lady, like the first, you know, all the layers of that experience, being like a maybe 6-7-year-old, being like, no, I'm going to meet that lady. Sorry, this mic is falling. Meet that lady when I think I was maybe 38 at the time. And she was lovely. She's a nice woman. We chatted for a while and then said bye. I've met both Todd and Janelle from the Terminator movies. And that one was a crazy story because
Xander Berkeley, right?
Xander.
Is that Xander Berkeley?
And I forget her name.
Jeanette Goldstein.
That's
Jeanette
right.
Goldstein. Okay.
So I wrote this song. Long story short, I always was like drawn to those characters in Terminator 2. The foster parents who kind of, it seems like they're not getting along that well or whatever. You get a little snapshot of their lives and then they get brutally murdered by the T-1000. And the thing that struck me about them was that in that scene, before she says Wolfie's just fine, Todd's walking around her. It's the T-1000. It's a machine that has no emotions. It has taken on the form of his wife and he doesn't even notice.
Oh.
I was like, oh shit, like this
Wow.
relationship, what's going on in this relationship
Man.
that he can't even tell? And he's obsessed about the dog barking and all this stuff. So I was like, ooh, what's their life like, or their lives like? And so I wrote that song, kind of made up all the details, but like I tried to truthfully tell that story. And Xander, a friend of mine, had worked with him years ago and sent the song to him, and I saw that he tweeted about it in a very like lovely way, which was very, very touching, and I freaked out. But then I saw him in a cafe years later here in LA, and I walked in and I was like, oh my God, that's Todd. And I was like, should I say hi? And I walked out of the cafe and I was like, you know what? Should just go say hi. You're the guy who wrote that song. So I walk up to him and I'm like, hey, don't mean to bother you. I'm John. The Wolfie's Just Fine stuff. I wrote this song, Todd and Janelle, and he just lights up and he's like, oh my God, you don't understand. I've sent that song to everyone. And,
that's so cool.
I'm kind of in shock, like just standing there, and I feel like I'm bothering him and his friend. He goes, hey, I'm going to this thing tonight. It's a memorial thing for Bill Paxton. You should come with me as my guest. I was like, no, I didn't know Bill Paxton. This was like in and around when Bill had passed away. Mr. Paxton. I don't know him. I won't call him Bill. And I was like, no. And look, I know I've mentioned this before. I don't really go out into the world. I don't, I record in the studio. I sometimes go see producers. I see a few friends. I'm not like I don't do that kind of thing. But he goes, no, you should really come with me. And I go, thanks. It was great meeting you. Let's be in touch. He gives me his number. He's like, I'm going to text you about tomorrow. I'm like, not going, but thank you. And then I keep trying to say no. And then he texts me, no fate, but what we make. The quote from Terminator 2.
He knew exactly what he was doing.
Low blow, very manipulative. And so I was like, okay. So I go with him. I'm like, oh, so nervous. And I'm going to this thing. So I find out it's this exhibition of these photos that were taken on this music video that Bill Paxton was in years ago. And people are using it as a moment to think about Bill and all that stuff. And I'm like, feel so awkward. I'm like, hey, I'm with him, And then eventually I turn around and Jeanette Goldstein, Janelle, is there. And so he calls her over. He says, hey, Jeanette, hey, this is the guy who wrote the Todd and Janelle song. And she lights up as well. She goes, oh my God, that was so moving. And all these lovely, lovely things that I'm frozen. Like, again, I'm a guy from the South Shore of Montreal. By some miracle, I ended up on a TV show and I've met like a few people on that set, but I don't meet people. And these people are like the people I grew up. Like I've seen Terminator 2 probably 400 times. The name of my band is Wolfie's Just Fine. Yeah. She says Wolfie's Just Fine. I'm like, you're the lady. You said it. And she says all these nice things to me. And I'm with them and I'm like, oh, that's so sweet. Oh my God. I'm like, can't really digest what's going on. And then these cameras start flashing. And then I turn around and James Cameron has just walked in and he joins them. And I'm standing there with them. And I just kind of like step back. I go, you guys, catch up, And so I'm standing alone. And eventually, like, they all get caught up. And then Xander goes, when Xander comes back to me, I go, when's the last time you saw, him? And he's like, the last time me, Jeanette, and him were in a room together shooting Terminator 2. Wow. I was like, what? And I was there.
Tell me more.
And then later we went to a screening of the music video, which was directed. I didn't know this, directed by James Cameron. And so I sit down next to Xander and near the front. Jeanette comes in, sits on the other side. So I'm sandwiched between Todd and Janelle. And then James Cameron comes to the front of the theater right in front of us and starts talking to the audience. And people are commenting. And so he starts talking to Jeanette, who is in the video, and to Xander, because, they have a lot of, history together. And so James Cameron's standing in front of me, talking to him, talking to Jeanette, and he's probably like, "Who is this asshole?"
Who's this guy
Sitting
pretending to be
between them. And I was like, I was in the Terminator 2 vortex for that brief moment, and I'm like, I could have died right after that moment, you know. And then when I try to tell people about that experience, I did a bit of stand-up last year just to see if I still wanted to do it. And I told that story, and like, no, everyone's like, who gives a shit? You know? Or like, so yeah, you were with these two actors, you know, and I'm like, no, you don't understand. It's like, that's for me. And then, you know, it doesn't translate to an audience. They're like, we thought you were gonna say you met Kanye or whatever. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, that was a long story.
No,
but
that's
one of the
beautiful.
most insane moments of my life.
You're like living in the title of your musical project right there. You're like, you were living in it for that night. Like, that's pretty awesome, man.
Complete insanity. And then on top of that, maybe a year later, I asked Xander to be in a Wolfie's Just Fine music video, and he graciously and generously agreed to do it. And he's incredible in it. If anyone wants to see that,
Which one is that?
It's called Break My Back. I wrote this like kind of short, weird thing, and we drove to the desert and filmed it all together. It was wonderful, and Xander's amazing in it. Break My Back by Wolfie's Just Fine.
That's on Perfection.
That's on Perfection, Nevada. Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, I mean, we're fortunate enough on this show sometimes that we'll clash with, even Xander Berkeley commented on one of our things because we did Air Force One.
Nice.
He commented on it, and he's because we made fun of a face that he made right before he gets thrown out of the plane, because it's just like a crazy face, but it's amazing. And you know, like Patrick Laberto from Three Ninjas, he's one of the three goons and Heathers. We've had him on before, and that was like, whoa,
nice.
Like I get what you mean by those people that like Patrick Laberto, who the hell is that? But like he was everything
Fester
to
from
me.
Three Ninjas.
Yeah,
you know, it's
yeah.
like,
yeah. We did the same thing. We interviewed Shane McDermott, who is the rollerblade kid in the movie Airborne from 1993. It was like, that was my idol when I was a kid.
Wow.
And if you would say, hey, Mike, would you rather talk to Brad Pitt or Shane McDermott? I'd be like, Shane McDermott. I have so many questions to ask him about rollerblading from my childhood, you know? But that's why your story is so perfect, man, is because like those are the moments that people that live in our world of nostalgia and loving stuff from childhood, it's unbelievable to meet them and see them in person and be like, I can't believe this happened.
Yeah, no, 100%. And on the league, whenever we'd have like a guest star, it was always very like I was always impressed by everyone, you know. Like I mentioned, Jeff Goldblum, Sarah Silverman, all these incredible humans that I was like, oh shit, I'm in the same room as these people. But the ones that really got to me, Jerry O'Connell was on an episode, and I didn't have any scenes with him. But for me, I don't know if you guys had this show in I think it only aired in Canada or something. It's called My Secret Identity. Do you guys know this? Oh, you have to look that up. Just the opening credits. And so I used to watch that all the time. And he was my idol, the coolest kid on the block, My Secret Identity. And so when I saw him, and I always hesitate to tell people because you don't know.
I know it.
You know? And I was like, hey, dude, My Secret Identity. And he immediately was like, you're Canadian, right? I'm like, yeah. Very, very nice guy. Super funny. But also the actor, Richard Kiel, who's been in like 400 movies. You would recognize him if you saw him. But for some reason, the movie of Mice and Men with Gary Sinise and John Malkovich like hit me like really hard in my teens. I think I for homework I had to read of Mice and Men. I was like, there's a movie. I'm gonna watch the movie. And not knowing that it would like change my life. Like it would. I didn't know the story. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know Steinbeck. I just knew I had homework and I had to watch this movie. And just so incredibly moved by it. And since then, I've seen it. It's one of those movies I've seen 100 times. And he plays the character who tells Candy to go shoot his dog. And he shoots Candy's dog. Anyway, small role. But when I saw him on the set of the League, he had a small role on the League. He was playing the mall Santa Claus in an episode, probably the Krampus episode, I'm assuming. And he was there, and I walked up to him. I was like, oh my God, that's the guy. And I had to say something. I said, Mice and Men is one of my favorite movies of all time. Your performance is amazing. And he was very nice. He was, oh, Gary's the best. And I was like, oh, he means Gary Sinise.
First name basis and everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. And
love it.
So that was like one of those moments where I was like, holy shit, and those are the people, because they're like the people who like populate a movie in the, to me, it's like they're creating the world of the movie, and they live in the world of the movie. Very often you're like, okay, Bruce Willis is stepping into the world of New York in 1990, or he's stepping in as the hero in this moment, but he's kind of like not in the day-to-day at the NYPD. Like, Kevin Chamberlain's character, and they just like every character, like the pigeon lady, she's in Central Park and she lives there. Kevin's gonna show up, he's gonna go home to Chicago, and but she's there, she just lives there forever. And so seeing those characters in real life, you go, oh my God, like you're not in Central Park or in New York.
We always get caught up in like in that sentiment. I think there's an aftermath to this, and our main characters don't live in it. Everyone else lives in that aftermath. Like it's like all the people in the Marvel movie after a city gets destroyed. It's like they all have to deal with their insurance people. They're the ones who have to deal with trying to go back to work, or like get their car. Like, I got to take an Uber today because my car got destroyed again. That kind of
go
crap.
on a date with that girl that I really like, but now I'm not.
But now she's dead because it's like tragic. But at the same time, we get caught up in like I think my favorite one was like the ninjas, the bad guy ninjas in Three Ninjas.
Yeah.
Like these
Three
guys
Ninjas had a real effect on you, huh?
Dude,
I don't know why.
I did bring it up twice now. So I like it's because it's not good anymore. But like,
dude, my favorite movie growing up was Superman 3. That was like my favorite movie of all time. So
at least you can admit it, right?
Yeah, you get it.
You just get caught up in those guys of like, what are they doing here? They get like, how are they? They're the ones being assigned to go attack these children. Like,
these are kids.
They're coming from like a temp agency. Like, they have to go home to an apartment at night sometime, right? Like, what's going on?
They're swinging real swords at kids' heads.
Yeah. Like, what's going on here? That's what we get caught up at. Chong Li from
a job, dude.
You're right.
God, when we talked about Chong Li in Bloodsport, how he still has to go home to his wife and kids, and he like takes shits and goes grocery shopping. Like, when you humanize people that way, it's awesome.
Yeah, Chong Li is like, he's not some superstar all the time. This is an underground tournament he goes to compete in.
He's still got to work a job.
He's still got to go get groceries with the squeaky wheel cart. Like, that's the kind of stuff we think about. Like, so I don't know. I get caught up in that stuff like so fast. I think that's why we get drawn to your stuff so much, and why it's so fun to have these conversations with now another person who gets caught up in it like we do. So
I 100% no thinking of minor characters taking shits. Wolfie's just fine. It is sort of that. It kind of really is. What are your like your movies growing up? Like, if you had like one or two that kind of defined an era, or like that you really, because I'll say, like, for me, Terminator 2, it just hit me at a certain age where, like, I hadn't even seen Terminator 1. It really hit me in a way that other movies, aside from being like younger, and those movies that really shook me on a different level. But Terminator 2, like, Terminator 2, I think, and Dumb and Dumber, I can't shake those. Those are like always, forever, everywhere. Recently, someone was talking about growing up in Austria, and every time someone says Austria, I can't. Like, I am from Austria. I'm like, Well, then, good day, mate. I can't. That's all I think about. And everything relates back to Terminator 2. But what are those movies for you guys?
Well, I'll go first because one of mine is Terminator 2. I have.
It's probably one of mine too, honestly.
Yeah, there's a guy back there, but that was an extremely formidable one for me. I'd probably say RoboCop even earlier than that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I guess it's just Titanian Men, I guess, but
Makes sense.
and then The Matrix. The Matrix blew my mind.
Yeah.
Those were I have a thing on the show where I love The Matrix, I love The Crow, and I love Blade, and that's the trench coat trinity. And
Yes.
I wore a trench coat all the time as a kid and painted my face with the Crow makeup and wore vampire teeth, and I just went outside and did stuff.
Yes.
And so those made me. Yeah.
My big ones were the Goonies was gigantic in my world. In fact, I don't know if you saw that. We got to spend the day in Mikey's house in Astoria. We made a video of like recreating scenes inside his house. It was maybe the best day of my entire life. And I have 2 kids and married to a beautiful woman. Back to the Future, I obsessed over Back to the Future, and it's still a masterpiece. And then we actually just talked about anything Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the first and the second one.
Yes.
The first one's still amazing.
Yeah.
The second one really fell apart, but nostalgically, that movie was incredible for me as a kid.
Ooh, I have to rewatch that. That's one I definitely need to rewatch. I know TURTLE power.
Yeah.
The soundtrack was great.
On a half shell. They're the heroes for. Yeah, no. Ooh, I got to go watch
So
that
good.
again. I remember whenever I see that actor, I don't even remember the movie, but I always think Casey Jones. That's the name of the character, right?
Yeah.
From the first one. Yeah.
Yeah. Whenever I see that actor, I don't even know his name. I go, oh, Casey Jones from Ninja Turtles.
Elias Koteas.
Yeah.
There it is.
Oh,
Elias.
yes. Yep. Great actor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's done a ton of stuff, but he's Casey Jones.
Yes.
Cricket.
But I some of those guys like T2 100%, Goonies very much so. I think some defining ones though that like really came around were Stand By Me. Stand By Me is another big one for me.
Yes.
I identified with Vern like way too much, just being it as a kid, like, and then I would say there's just some comedy movies out there like Hot Shots and Naked Gun
wow.
that
Yes.
just absolutely like wrapped me up in a warm blanket of comedy.
Yeah.
Like I could laugh at those movies anytime, any day. Like if I needed to be brought out of something, I should put on one of those movies.
Yes. Yeah. Both Naked Gun and Hot Shots. For me, it was the experience of seeing how silly grown-ups could be.
Yes.
Like, you don't think
Yes.
it's possible, like with your parents and their friends and everything, and all of a sudden, like the insanity going on in Hot Shots and in Naked Gun. To this day, so my wife, his family lives down in San Diego, so we drive from LA to San Diego very often. And I don't know what those 2 buildings are that look like breasts, but every time I drive by there, I think everywhere I go, something reminds me of her. And that's the shot in Naked Gun. And I think it every time my wife looks at me, says, don't say it.
We're going to take a different route this time. I'm driving.
Take it a long road.
Yeah, no, it's like, because I've heard you guys talk about this before, but the idea of, and young people these days won't understand it, but that you had to go somewhere to get a movie, and the movie was in a box. Like, now everything is just on the internet, on computers or whatever in the TV already. But you have to actually go get a thing that was in a box and bring it home and take it out of the box, and then you have a movie in your home. You didn't just have movies in your home. And so the how special that experience is. And with music, it's the same. I remember being a kid and being like, I really wanted Nirvana Unplugged in New York. I had no money, and I was like, I have to go somewhere to get that, somehow get money and bring it home so that I can listen to it. I can't just listen to it, and it would drive me crazy. Tried to steal it, got caught. That's another story. but I think that makes it that much more precious. And I know that kids these days, they're having a different experience. I'm sure they're going to talk in the future when they're like, when the movies now get beamed directly into your brain, we had to actually go on Netflix.
We had to grab a remote. Ugh.
Yeah.
One time it buffered on me, like
yeah, exactly. It didn't start the second you would press play. Or you just didn't know the entire movie immediately in your head after like 0.2 of a second.
Turns out you don't actually have to watch movies anymore. You just know what they are.
Yeah,
they just exist.
Yeah, exactly. So I know that every generation has that experience, but there's something about, did you guys have, we didn't have cable at home, and we didn't have a VCR because, again, very Christian parents. So I wasn't even allowed to watch anything that was like beyond PG, like PG-13. That was very tricky. And so we had no cable. We had like 3 channels, and you're at the mercy of whatever Canadian channels you have. And then no VCR. So it was friends' houses where I'd get like a peek into the world of like whatever. I remember, Terminator 2, the first time I saw it, I had to go to my friend's house, and he was the one kid that was allowed to watch R-rated movies because his parents kind of just weren't checking in on him on the content he was watching. And so we started watching Terminator 2, and it was a weeknight, and my mom called and was like, "What are you doing? You have to get home." And I'm like, "You don't understand." I'm engulfed in this movie, and to be like pulled away from it and have to like somehow find another friend at some point who has Terminator 2 to see the second half.
God.
I know, it's terrible.
But it's an investment, man. You're right. You like invested your time to go get it.
Yes.
To bring it home. So like you gotta watch it. You have to. You can't just be like, I watched 5 minutes of this movie. I'm gonna switch to something else. Like you had to go for it.
Or if you wanted to rewatch it, you had to like take your friend's VHS and copy it somehow. Like make a whole tape. Like we did have a VHS in our house, but speaking of Terminator 2, do you remember the commercial back in the 90s, the Campbell's soup commercial where the kid comes in from the snow and he looks like a snowman? And then he starts eating Campbell's soup, and he starts to melt, and it's like, yeah, eat Campbell's soup. So we taped Terminator 2 off of TV, and that's where the movie started for me. Was that commercial? And then it ended up where one of the twins, in the facility, was getting the coffee and then got stabbed or whatever. That's where it ended up. So I was watching Campbell's soup commercial, and then that part of Terminator on through.
But you did, and you're like, cool.
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, it has a weird ending, but it's a great movie.
It starts off really promising.
It's just
and
something
Campbell's
about
soup
that.
never comes back. They just introduce the soup, and then
Unless the lava was no, I don't think so.
No, it can't.
we had. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, man.
I was going to say we recorded the movie Tremors, and I recorded it, and we watched it a few times. My mom didn't. This was later on. Once we had a VCR, my uncle actually bought us a VCR because he was like, "You guys are ridiculous." And so I had taped from TV Tremors, and we were watching it, and then eventually my mom caught on, and she kind of was like, "What's going on?" And I think one of my younger siblings got scared, and so she took the tape, and my tiny little mom, she's maybe 5 foot tall, smashed it with a hammer.
Wow.
Yeah. I know. She was like, "No." And so to me, like being able to, she's a lovely woman. That was like her one moment of like, I can destroy this thing in front of me. But to me, like it was just, and on top of it, I come from a French Canadian area of it was the South Shore of Montreal. We spoke English at home, but all my friends spoke French, so I would get movies in French. Like I didn't have a choice because at home we weren't allowed to watch a bunch of stuff. So I would go to my friends' houses and I'd watch these movies in French, like Back to the Future, Retour vers le futur. I would watch all these movies in French, not really knowing, because I was so young that I was like, I don't know. It's in a language that I understand. I don't understand that it's like dubbed in French or whatnot.
Right.
And it's just like it's what was available to us, and there's so many things like people will quote movies now, and very often, or at least when I was younger, I didn't understand what they were talking about because I had seen them in French.
In French.
In French. And so, like, you know, when people would say like Scarface, say hello to my little friend, and like, you know, in high school, you know, I'd hear that a lot. I didn't understand what they were referring to, because I had seen Scarface in French at my friend's house, and in French he says, wait, what is it? Oh yeah, okay. So in French he goes, "Elle va cracher ma vieille frangine," and in English that directly translates to, "She's gonna spit, my little sister."
So even the if it would have translated directly to say hello to my little friend, you would have probably understood. Be like, oh,
yes,
but it doesn't even translate to the same thing.
Only later did I look it up and go, why does he say that? You know, and because culturally,
Right.
say hello to my little friend. Little friend in French is my girlfriend. So it wouldn't make sense. Say hello to my girlfriend, which is kind of still better. And then I think that was an old expression that meant something, but it literally means she's gonna spit my my old sister. She's gonna spit my old sister. It's the strangest thing. You know, Biff in Back to the Future, in that scene where he's with in the cafe,
Lorraine.
No, when he goes, when Marty sees his father for the first time next to him, and he, McFly, and they both turn around. In that scene, Biff turns to Marty, who's staring at him, and says, "Yeah, what are you looking at, butthead?"
Butthead.
Like, yeah, what are you looking at, butthead? In French, he says, "Tu veux ma photo, banane?" Which in English, if you translate that, it means, "You want my picture, banana?" You know,
I'm so grateful that most movies are made in America that we watch, because I couldn't deal with it.
Don't know how lucky you are. But yeah,
it sounds like they sound like a deep TV for like primetime TV edit that they had to do, or something. Like, we can't say butthead.
Yeah,
call him a banana.
Yeah, we had recorded Major League 2. Or maybe it was just the first Major League.
It's the first one. If you're talking about the TV edit at the end.
Is it the same one that strike that guy out?
Dude, we've talked about, I think it's one of the worst edits ever, where he goes, strike this motherfucker out.
Yeah.
But in the TV edit, it goes, strike this guy out.
Yeah.
There's like a 2-minute pause in the middle of that.
It's so funny. And of course you guys have talked about that before. That's insane. That's a joke between my brothers and I. You know, when we want to say motherfucker, we just say guy.
Yeah.
Guy. What was the other one?
Guy.
The other one was Dumb and Dumber, the TV edit, when he's like, we successfully made it a bulldog with a Shih Tzu. Yeah, we called it a bullshit. And he starts laughing.
Yeah.
The TV edit, we successfully made it a bulldog with a Shih Tzu. And he just starts laughing.
There's no punchline.
No punchline. Which I guess makes sense for that movie.
Well, that's the other thing, like TV edits, you know, kids these days aren't going to understand that, or watching movies with commercials, because it's so insane to try to explain it to like my nephews, to be like, no, first of all, the movies weren't here, you had to go get them at a place and bring them home, and they're like, but what are you talking? And you have to kind of explain to them, like, there's no iPad, there's no. They just don't understand me when I try to tell them, like, just imagine that the whole family has one iPad, and it's very big and very heavy, so you have to leave it in one room. But on this iPad, you have like maybe you have one app. You only have one app on the iPad, and that iPad has 3 subscriber channels to it. But you can't watch whatever content from those channels you want whenever you want to watch them. It's whatever's live streaming in that moment, and you can just go back and forth from those 3 things. You can't pause it, you can't do anything. Can't fast forward, can't rewind. And if you want a movie or something that you actually want, you have to like go to a store, choose the thing, bring it back in the box, and then put it into this iPad, and then you can watch it, but not forever. You can watch it for like a day, and you have to.
And they're going to start charging you if you don't bring it back.
If you want a movie, it's downloadable content that you have, or like in-app purchases that you have to make. It's like,
Yeah, exactly. Pay-per-view. Yeah.
I lived in that world, and it's actually wild to hear you say that. Now that we're so deep into modern world, it actually seems kind of insane that we used to have to do that.
Oh yeah, I mean, like even some TVs didn't have like the built-in one. Like we had VCR. You know, there was a separate apparatus you had to put it in, and then they made like actual rewind machines that you could put that in too.
Yeah.
They were faster than your VCR. It's nuts.
We talked about when cable did come around, some of them had an A/B switch on the cable where there was like your TV only had 20 channels, but there was 40 cable channels. So it had a switch that channel 1A was different than channel 1B. And you had to physically get up and switch it. Do you guys remember that at all?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it was wild.
I remember when TV just ended at night. Like programming ran out.
Done. Go to bed. And we all did. We all went to bed.
Yeah.
You know, it's that weird screen with all the colors.
Yep.
Yeah, it was either that or watch weird Nick at Night shows that I didn't probably want to watch. You know, I didn't want to watch I Love Lucy again because it was black and white, not a colored episode. So
yeah, for us, we didn't even have cable. So once in a while, I mean, this is another thing that no one's going to understand is our TV was in the basement, but they would have wrestling main events on NBC, and you could sort of make out what was happening on the TV if you brought the TV up into the kitchen, which was a floor up, and we would put hangers in the TV, and we would kind of be like, I think that's Hulk Hogan. And I think he's fighting Big Boss Man. I can't tell, but you kind of got a vague feeling for it, and we loved it. We didn't give a shit, you know. But the idea of move the iPad around, and you'll be able to see a little bit of that other YouTube channel. You're like, you know,
perfect. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna say this just because. It's the same thing with like video games. Video games was like as much of my rental experience as like as movies were.
Yeah.
Like video games I would do like would never
you rent the console.
We rented the console.
Of course.
We never got the console until we finally got a Nintendo 64. Like that was it. And but even then after that we didn't see another console in our house for like 6-7 years. We were renting an Xbox or something, or you know, we rented a Nintendo 64 often. We would maybe rent a PlayStation. Like we would go and rent video games or go to the arcade because that was all we had to do. And like I think about going to the arcade the same way of going to the rental store too, because like Aladdin's Castle in the mall in Burlington, Iowa was like a mecca.
It was
the coolest.
Just like in T2
thing.
Man, same thing.
Yeah.
I wanted to go to that one really bad.
Yeah, I wanted to go there, and like that was the whole experience. And by the way, I'm only saying this now because I had an emotional experience when I listened to Mortal Kombat 2 when I first heard that song, because I was the kid who could play the fighting video games better than other people.
Yes.
Yes. Pisses me off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like when you're, my experience with that, which is true, like those video games, not unlike movie theaters, like movies would come out in the movie theater, not like today, but you know, and they'd be in the movie theater for a while before they came out on VHS or DVD. But the same with video games. Like the video games in the arcade, many of them just never came out in console form because they were the graphics or whatnot.
Yeah.
But even when they did, like, you know, when the Mortal Kombats and the Street Fighter 2s and all that stuff came out, they were just exclusively in arcades. Like you could not play those at home. So the experience of going to a place and paying a quarter or 50 cents for each match, and you have to do it publicly too. Like that, the experience.
That was a big deal.
Yeah, if you're gonna lose, you have to lose in front of people. Like you have an audience there. And when I was a kid, that was like almost the experience of being on stage, and like you're not only like having to like, you know, play the video game, but there's you're performing, or you're at least like, you know, doing the video game version of like an after school fight, you know. And so as a very shy kid, I was always very quiet, and I, you know, I would kind of be in the corner of a room, people wouldn't notice me. One of my first experiences of being noticed was I had spent a lot of time playing Mortal Kombat 1 and then Mortal Kombat 2 in the arcade. And then there was this older kid in this, like, I went with my buddy. It's like a pool hall, the cool older kids, teenagers. And they had the new Mortal Kombat 2 machine, and I had just memorized Baraka's finisher. And it's a really, really cool one. If you watched a video for Mortal Kombat 2 by Wolfie's Just Fine, it's the one that ends the video. And I kind of put my quarter on top of the arcade, and so we played, and like I played out in the song. In the song, I kind of combined a few things because I was also bullied in high school, so I kind of combined the story a little bit with the bully, but the real experience was this like cigarette smoking like 14-year-old, and I'm this like little 12-year-old, and I beat the shit out of him in public, and then got the finisher, and it was probably finish him, bomb bomb bomb. The screen goes dark. Baraka's Wolverine swords come out of his hands, and he lifts the opponent, and the opponent slides down the blades. It was, again, that was another moment where I was like, I could die right now. This is like peak life right now. But the intensity of those moments, again, when you're a kid and you're out in public, that to me was like, you know, as intense and as satisfying as any experience can be as a human being in that moment. And so hence thinking about those things, you know?
Yeah. I just like, for me, that very same experience was Tekken. If you ever played Tekken at all. Yeah. It was like Tekken Tag or something, or Tekken 3 or whatever. And I remember sitting, and I remember feeling the pride of my older brother watch me beat the shit out of like 4 people in a row. During this. And the only reason we had to leave was because we had to go. My mom was done shopping. And like, and
you could have kept going.
And
who knows how far you're going?
And like some other kid put his quarter on there and stuff. And like, well, we got to go, but we got to go, man. But I've never seen, it's like my brother was like, he was like looking to throw down money. It seemed like
he was Nick Swartzen in Grandma's Boy, being like,
just hyping me up on it. And like, he was just so excited because like there were some guys that came in and like leaned down into the machine, like ready to do their moves and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And like, they were real serious about it. And I was Law, and I would just windmill kick these guys until they weren't standing anymore. And it was like the best thing on earth. And like I walked out of that place just feeling like a king. Like, I'm the youngest of 4 boys, John, and I walked out of there feeling the tallest person in the mall.
Dude, that's huge. And they get older brother cred too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
You're experiencing like maybe for the first time as a kid, both of you, like true victory. True conquering over something, you know. And then with your brother, it's just like, the captain said good job.
Pretty much. Man. It's just those moments.
The closest you can get to the experience of like when I was a kid watching like Jean-Claude Van Damme movies, or like American Ninja, or whatever those movies are, where there's a guy, a bunch of bad people, they attack him, and the guy beats the shit out of him. Those video games brought and you know, I feel like internally that's what's happening in those moments, you know, and you're getting that experience of being Jean-Claude Van Damme, or, you know, Steven Seagal, young Steven Seagal, you know, whatever it is, as a kid, you know.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It is, man. It's as close as you can get to your movie moment, your roundhouse kick moment, your your Van Damme roundhouse kick moment. It's as close as you can get as a kid.
John, do you ever have any plans to take Wolfie's Just Fine like on the road ever and like play some public shows?
Yeah, I do. I one time I rehearsed a band, and the thing that happened then was I got an injury, so I couldn't play. But I realized that like to actually do these songs justice, very you need a lot of vocalists.
Yeah.
And so rehearsing, because there's a lot of harmonies and stuff and instrumentation is going on. It wasn't like when I was a kid and I was like, yeah, let's go, guitar, bass, drums, we can play these songs. The more I got into it, the more I was like, no, when I go on tour, I'll do it correctly. But that's really going to require some work, because not to compare myself with the Beatles, because I'm way better than those guys. But the Sgt. Pepper thing of like just record, make the music sound however you need it to sound,
That's
and
true.
then you'll figure out how to play it live down the road. I'm at that stage now. I really do want to play these songs live. I just this is every Normal Guy Records. You're looking at him. All of the employees are right here. CEO, and I'm a terrible CEO and employee. So people have been asking me for years for vinyl, and I'm like, yeah, that's a great idea. And I'm like, I have to do it though. This is the problem. I do. Vinyl's coming. Live performances are coming. I'm working on some new Wolfie stuff right now. It's just when you don't tour, I've talked to a bunch of record labels over the years, and I just like controlling when I put things out, how I put things out, and
that's
all
the way.
that stuff. Yeah, I don't want to be at the mercy of like finishing an album and then the label's like, yeah, we have room for that for the release in 8 months, a year from now or whatnot. Like I like just being, I very often I do nothing with my time, and then once in a while I'm like, okay, I'll focus and I'll work, and I just want to be able to do that at my own pace. So anyway, all that to say, there's more stuff coming, but touring is like a whole ordeal, just because it's me, and hopefully vinyl as well. Probably with the next release, I'll do a back catalog of vinyl.
Oh, cool!
That'd be awesome.
We will be purchasing it. You have already sold a couple, so
I was just say you've sold 3 copies of most of them, I am assuming. People at least 3 to 6 that will buy tickets to shows.
That's in Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Well, we'll travel a little bit.
Oh, yeah, we'll go somewhere.
But also
I'll make sure to get like a 3 Ninjas small character song.
Yeah, if you could actually write a 3 Ninjas song, we'd really appreciate that.
Just do it about all the temp agency ninjas that Snyder had to hire. That just
like
needed
a
a job
soft
at that
folk
point.
song about being like, I know I have to kill these kids, but I'm conflicted about it. The salary's so good though.
The benefits. We're having a kid, Mary. We need benefits, okay?
I need to keep this going.
I need this health care that this guy provides.
Oh my God.
We've also got 3 guys who you've certainly made, 3 grown men that you've certainly made tear up with your music. I just want to put that one out there too.
Well,
so, and and good luck on the 3 Ninjas song.
We say on the show all the time that what nostalgia is like watching a movie for the first time in a long time that you watched as a kid, and feeling that you felt the first time you saw it, and then it takes you all the way back to that memory. I feel like your music is the only music, genuinely, I mean this, only music that does that as well. And audibly, of course. But I do want to say too, that all of the songs about movies or about certain characters like this are encapsulated by other songs that maybe I'm just not sure what they're about. And I don't want you to say what they're about. I want them to be about what I think they are. But like even Mary Eve means a lot to me. But sandwiched in between like these songs about movies, especially the albums tell a story for me. Like going from, A New Beginning to a Mary Eve or something like that. It tells a story to me, and it becomes a movie in my brain. I picture this kid in my brain when I listen to it. So It's definitely more to me than just the movie songs.
Totally.
Yeah, and it means the world that you come on the show and talk to us. We really
Yeah, man.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, that really sincerely means a lot to me. Yes, not all the songs are about movies or through the point of view of movie characters or me interacting with movies. But I'm happy you like the Mary Eve song. I won't tell you what it's about. It is about three ninjas.
Okay, awesome. That's what I thought.
Yes,
That's what we thought.
It's a different character. But sincerely, like, it does mean a lot to me because Wolfie's Just Fine it is a passion project. Like there's no if you're not touring with music and I'm like putting out these songs about like watching Friday the 13th part 5, there's like there's no money in it. Spoiler alert. If anyone is sitting at home thinking about writing a song from the point of view of another minor character from Die Hard with a Vengeance, spoiler alert, you're probably not going to make your money back. But for me, it's like I'm expressing, as much of myself as I can with that stuff. So I really appreciate it. And also just to say, I'm not, I don't know, like whenever like Billy Bob Thornton is asked about his career as not a musician, he like loses his mind and gets upset. I'm a musician. I'm like, yeah, I'm also like the high as fuck everyday normal guy and taco and all that other stuff. And this for me is like a way to where I can actually like just fully be myself. And not to say that I don't enjoy also being really, really dumb.
Sure.
Like Dumb and Dumber legitimately is, I think, in hindsight, I thought back about it and I was like, oh, I think just Taco, I was just being like Harry and Lloyd. I think that was like ideally I was like, I'm aiming for Harry and Lloyd and maybe a little Kramer or whatnot.
It was always nailed, FYI, on the league. Like it's just one of those. I can't tell you. That was a very strange show for me to fall into. I'll just say this quick or whatever, but a strange show for me to fall into because I'm not a football person. I don't care about football. I just don't. It's the Super Bowl today.
We're podcasting on the Super Bowl.
There you go.
This is my Super Bowl.
You just reminded me. I had no idea. I was like, Super Bowl.
But like falling into that and just like being like enjoying that show, it became like a favorite for, which is again also rare for me and my wife to just like sit down and watch and just like let the night finish out. You know what I mean? So and I loved it. I loved watching you on that. It's a great fucking show, man.
It was so much fun. It was just us laughing all day long and making up stuff and great people. I live not too far from Jason. I see him quite often just on our morning walks.
Yeah.
He's lovely. Just the whole cast, everyone's just such a lovely group of people. And it was just great to just try to make each other laugh all day long. Yeah. It was I'm in hindsight, I can't even believe like I got to do that. I cherish it, and I also cherish how fucking crazy and silly they let us get.
Oh yeah, it was great.
I'll end with my mom, the very Christian lady I've talked about, saw one episode, and it was heavy on, I think, Rafi Seaman jokes, and she was like, "I'm very proud of you. Not gonna watch it ever again."
Well, we got to talk to Paul about a Hot Frosty and everything not terribly long ago, and
yes.
It's having you on here, man. Is it's such a treat. It's so awesome.
Well, that's very nice, and everyone read Paul's book. It is
it's amazing,
fantastic.
I'm in the middle of it right now.
Oh, great! Yeah, no, it's wonderful. He's a good dude. He's the best.
He's great.
Well, if you haven't done it already, check out Wolfie. It's wolfiesjustfine.com, right? That's the website, but obviously search it on any platform. If you're listening to this show, it is guaranteed you will like it, and I hope everybody will check it out, man. If we've talked about it enough, if you haven't checked it out now, like here's your time.
100%.